right? And I was actually just 2 days ago. I was just looking. In the morning I have one of those big things called the Four Works and Other Talks, the Four Yogas and Other. It's a nice collection Vivekananda did. Looks like the gospel, but it's black, brown. It's very nice, a little bit different editing. I talked about some of these words. That's my morning coffee reading, trying to put something in the brain, not so successfully, and so I read this is a very nice statement. Somebody responds to somebody saying, "You're working too. Why are you working so hard? You're working like a madman." He's working. He's not we know, how much. Actually, his public life was like 9 years, I think. Right, 9 years. Of that, 4 or 5 were sick. Right, so the complete works, all that, and everything he did is about 4.5 years of work. Such what power was behind it? Why did he work so hard, so much so that he actually, even by his own words, he burned himself out. Right. So he says my son, there is no rest for me. That which Sri Ramakrishna called Kali took possession of me, of my body and soul, 3 or 4 days before his passing away. Right. We've read some stories or some transmission that Thakur gave before his passing. But the response years later, we know that scene. I mean, it's in the literature that's come down to us. But here in Swami Bhajananda's own mouth, he's describing the effect of that years later, right? As he's literally wearing his body out in his work, right? He says that what took possession of me, what took hold of my mind and heart and soul and body, that same thing, or that same person, that same reality, that my guru Sri Ramakrishna called Kali. Right, so his own understanding of what was he doing, what was forcing, what was moving was Mother Kali. This makes me work, and never lets me keep still or look to my personal comforts. Right, his passion for Mother Kali, the energy of Mother Kali behind. And so, as we were doing yesterday, we were doing a puja. I was thinking a little bit. Like when we worship in temples, you worship, like if you worship Durga, you also worship her, or if you worship Shiva, you worship the consort and the Vahana, the vehicle. Right? You have Shiva and Parvati and Nandi. You have Vishnu and Lakshmi and Garuda. Right? Like this, right? So actually, on the shrine, usually we have the three together. It has a similar thing. We have Sri Ramakrishna, we think is Yuga Avatar, his Shakti, Sharada Devi, and his vehicle. The one he carried him, right? Of course, maybe please forgive me, I'm not calling him an animal, like this. But it's interesting that still is a new deity. I mean, in the tradition of Ramakrishna's picture, Holy Mother Sri replaces all of the deities. Right? I mean, we have 33 million deities at our temple, so it has not every place. but Sarva Devi Devi Swarupaya, all gods and goddesses are in this picture, are in his form. Right? So it's a complete picture, right? God, his Shakti, and his messenger or his vehicle is another way of thinking of it, right? So Swami Vivekananda was the messenger or the carrier of Sri Ramakrishna's message, especially for a particular purpose. But what was that message? And of course, Sri Ramakrishna it's not easy, it's very dangerous to try to define the teachings of Sri Ramakrishna, or the message of Sri Ramakrishna, or the mission of Sri Ramakrishna. Dangerous and foolhardy to do like that. But you can take a few things, right? So one of the things that, in that opening at the Parliament of Religion, he talks about we come to like the unity of religion, right? Or the transcendent unity, the foundation of religion, right? And this was definitely a message. And that's not the only message of Sri Ramakrishna, but it was the one Swamiji very much pushed, right? And it was a necessary message of the time, in the West as well as in India. And this was a unique realization to Sri Ramakrishna. Where did he get this realization? If we look at him, at Sri Ramakrishna, he was born in Kamapukur, about 65 miles from Calcutta. But it's not 65 miles, it's 300 years from Calcutta at the time. Right? It was a different, even now it's, Calcutta unfortunately has kind of caught up in the last 10 years, I think. Calcutta has now, the present modern world has also, it's still a nice village, but still, it's not so separate anymore. At that time it was totally different, right? It was a totally different, so when he at the death of his father and his brother moved to Calcutta to teach Sanskrit and open a Sanskrit school and do puja, he moved to Calcutta, and a couple of years later he became a priest at the Dakshineshwar temple. Maybe you probably know the story, that Rani Rasmani, I can go to tell something about Dakshineshwar. Rani Rasmani, she was she's one of our heroes, and she truly one of a remarkable person. To say ahead of her time, I think we're just behind her time, right? That's the thing. She was an incredibly powerful person, and it was a story of rags to riches. Not rich, she was actually kind of considered a low caste, a fisher woman caste, and a very rich man. It's right out of a Bollywood movie, right? You see, there's a boat with rich man's boat, and he sees a very pretty girl bathing, and he goes, "Oh, I want to marry her." That type of thing, right? And it turns out he was a very rich man indeed, right? And so she didn't marry, and then she soon after passed away, right? So, and leaving this huge estate, this property all over India and all over East Bengal, like this tremendous property, tremendous holdings, and she became a very extremely important person. I've been to her house. Right, the owners of Dakshineshwar, her descendants, the legal owners of Dakshineshwar, the trustees and things like this. The priests are descendants of Ramakrishna's brothers and cousins, and the trustees are descendants of Rani Rasmani generally, with a few exceptions. So I went. We know a very senior descendant of Rani Rasmani. He's like Rani was maybe her great aunt or something. His great aunt. He's very elderly now. So we go to his house. The house is one city block. Wow. Not the property. The house is one city block. So you realize, like, wow, how much money at that time was possible. And so she had a desire, as a very religious woman and a very rich woman, to go on a pilgrimage to Benares, Varanasi. And now we go on a pilgrimage, we grab our side bag and go up to Varanasi, right? But that's not how it was done for people in her strata of society. It was, I forget, in the Lila Prashang, in the Ramakrishna's Divine Play, the Great Master, it's very elaborately described how many there's records of it, receipts, like how many boats, with like 50 boats. You have to have boats for cows, boats for, if the Rani needs milk, you need cows. To have cows, you need hay. You have a different boat for hay, different boat for servants to milk the cow, servants to keep the hay. It was a tremendous thing, right? And usually it's said at the eve of her moving, a few days before she was supposed to make that pilgrimage, she had a dream of Mother Kali, right? And what she says, and Mother Kali told her, cancel your trip to Varanasi. This is not the proper use, right? Instead, I want you to build a temple for me on the bank of the Ganga, right? There's so many songs that why do I need to go to Kashi if I have Mother Kali in my home? Right, you don't need to go anywhere. She was given that instruction, and she, after also in the Great Master, it's there how long it took to find the property, what was signing of the property. Many auspicious things happened. Inauspicious things also happened to get the property, and the property was bought, and the embankment was built, and the temple began to be built. But then something happened. A problem came up. Right, she needed a priest. And it became slowly, the rumors came around that Rani Rasmani, she was famous, she was a household name, right? She had actually fought the British and won many times. She was a very strong person. She was in the newspapers, She's building a Kali temple. And everybody said, impossible, right? She's from a low caste family. She's official. Nobody will no priest that will serve in that temple. And Bengal at the time was a seat of orthodoxy, considerably. Right, even up to 50, 60 years ago, probably the more orthodox behavior left was there. Nobody will do puja, and nobody will take prasad. The Brahmins won't take prasad, and the sadhus, sannyasis, bhavas won't take prasad, right? Because this is from a fisher woman, and so already millions, equivalent to it's in today's equivalent, millions and millions of dollars were already spent to get this news, right? So she began to send letters to different scholars. Is there any solution? Right, and Sri Ramakrishna's brother Ramkumar, he wrote a very important opinion, and his opinion was, no, it's no problem. You can put the deed of the property in your guru's name. The guru had already died, but the guru was a Brahmin. Therefore, the temple is not Rani Rasmani's temple; it's that Brahmin's temple, and therefore you can hire a priest, and people will take prasad. So very good. With that, she doubled, keep it going. The image was made out of But then another problem came, right? who's going to? Okay, but we have an evidence, we have a note, we have an opinion, a scholarly opinion, pundit's opinion. But who's going to? Nobody would dare. Nobody wants to be the first person to do such a thing. Because what I mean, for now we think, oh, that just seems like, but there's real world problems, right? What if you're considered by your community to have lost your caste? You can't marry your children. You can't work. Right, it's like there's many. The problems could be, and no, it was not just because one person said it, nobody else said it. The rest of the society didn't accept it, so it was challenged. So he had to become the priest, right? Otherwise, he looks like his opinion was published. It was in the paper, right? And all of a sudden, if he doesn't do it, if he doesn't believe his own opinion, his reputation will be destroyed. So Ram Kumar did the puja, and within a couple of years, Sri Ramakrishna was a pujari, also there, right? So he was not, as you can imagine, Sri Ramakrishna was not a normal person, right? And he would pray. Since youth, he had tremendous spiritual experiences, actually, but he would pray when he was doing the puja. He actually, we were trying to do, we're wiggling our fingers and chanting mantras and mudras and sprinkling stuff. If you read in his practice, even the simple things of puja, how real they were. He would feel everything. We imagine a circle of fire. The fire would burn the hairs of his arms. It's like it was the things of puja to somebody like Sri Ramakrishna are very real. And so he was serving the image of Mother Kali, and he was thinking, is she real? Not the general thing that is Mother Kali. Kali is a name for God. I mean, it's the background religion of Bengal all the time. It's not like that. But like, is the image real? Does it make any sense that we're putting food in front of her? Right? Does she eat the food? Does she smell the incense? Does she actually hear? Is she responsive? Right? He says, according to the stories, you came in front of Ramprasad. You came in front of Komalakanta. Right? So is that ended? Right? And so was his intensity. We know that, Mother Kali had to respond. There's one brief. There's 4 or 5 pages of this vision. I'll just give a few sentences. So the story comes down is that he was singing. He was so passionate. He got so emotional and so much longing. He began to give up hope. And he saw there's a sword hanging. Of course, Ma Kali holds the sword, but there's a second sword at the Chineshwar temple. This would have been used for animal sacrifice on the rare occasion it was done. Now it just hangs there. They don't even. But it was a real sword. And he said, I'm going to he grabbed that sword, right? And he was going to slice his own throat, right? He said, it was just too much. And at that moment, something happened, right? He had a visionary experience. He describes it this way. I had a marvelous vision, Sri Ramakrishna speaking, of the mother and fell down unconscious. Within me there was a steady flow of undiluted bliss that I had never before experienced. And I felt the immediate presence of the Divine Mother. But he describes it more elaborately. It's like the waves of bliss expanded, everything disappeared, everything everything became consciousness, and everything whirled, and I lost consciousness. I was lost in that ocean of ecstasy. Right? I couldn't find where I was. It's very elaborately described. 4 or 5 paragraphs that we get. So then the question Sharananda asks, he says, okay, he's asking Kali, this Kali was 4 arms, and her tongue sticking out, the image of Kali and the Mundamala, are you real? Right? And then, but he had to respond to that, he gets a universal cosmic experience, right? And, almost like a non-dualistic experience, we could say. So we know the Supreme Spirit is real, the universal consciousness is real, he got a glimpse of it, right? But did it answer the question, is Kali real, was 4 arms, and who eats our rice offerings, right? But he says that bit by bit, actually, when he came to consciousness, he was saying Ma, Ma, Ma. So he knew who he had experienced, right? The one who is imaged and embodied in the form of Kali, the Rupa of Kali, is also that universal, unlimited, beyond definition reality, right? And slowly, visions kept coming. His longing only increased, and his visions kept coming, and pretty soon that universal consciousness that he got a glimpse of and got overwhelmed, he began to be able to have conversations with. She began to talk to him, to guide him, to answer his questions, to send him teachers, right? Bit by bit like this. Sometime I would lose outer consciousness from that unbearable agony. Immediately after that, I would see the mother's luminous form bestowing boons and fearlessness. So the luminous form, her Rupa, Boons and fearlessness are the positions of her hands. So it makes you'd see that same mother as the image of Mother Kali. So it was that showing that Kali and that Supreme Brahman in Ramakrishna's experience were the same. I used to see her smiling, talking, consoling, and teaching me in various ways. So something awakened in Sri Ramakrishna at this point. And you could say, either it awakened in him or it was put in him. Right? Sri Ramakrishna would actually, Mother made me practice so many sadhanas. Right? So pretty soon, and the way he understood it, Divine Mother's grace and arrangement, he began to get, he had his own experiences without formal sadhana. It's about his longing. Through his intense longing and sincerity, he saw God. Right? But if Sri Ramakrishna is who we think he is, who his devotees believe is the avatar, what's the now? He comes to fill up a crying need. Right? And so one of those crying needs is religion real? Right? That's the disease of this age is lack of faith and skepticism. Right? The challenge of the modern world is a very good challenge, very hard to give a good answer. Right? And so he began to experience, practice all the traditional forms of religion, not just his longing to see the divine everywhere. Kind of the spiritual, not religious idea. Is religion real? Right? It's like, and so he began to practice the various forms. Then different teachers came, right? Vaishnava and forms of the devotional forms of Vaishnavism. Then the Vairavi Brahmani came. That's a beautiful scene when she first arrived, right? So beautiful. And she was a tantric, a Vaishnava scholar, and a tantric, siddha. And she had a full knowledge of one school of tantra. There's 3 main schools of tantra, and there's 64 branches of this one school, Eastern school. And so she began to teach him they're very difficult practices. Some of them difficult, many of them dangerous, some of them almost scandalous. These are on the edge of acceptable by society standards, right? And he practiced, and we could also, if we understand from the tradition comes down, he also practiced forms of Islam or one way of practice, and got the result, and from Christianity by vision of Jesus and absorbed. We know these stories. The conclusion is at the end of each one, he saw from his perspective, he saw the essence of each tradition, the truth, the actual, the reality that each tradition held, right, including the foreign face of Christianity and Islam, right, and all the indigenous face of his own community. He saw the reality. But what was that reality? He saw his Divine Mother Kali. That reality, and so he would say, years later, many years later, there's a beautiful, that scene when he's on the boat with Keshav Sen in the steamer, right, where in order to, in the gospel it doesn't come, but in the original in the original version, there's little tiny chapters as headings, and so the headings show a lot also. It's how M organized it. And in this one part, the heading is Kali Brahman, not Kali dash Brahman. Or the unity of Kali. It's Kali Brahman. It's one word. The new word that M used to describe Sri Ramakrishna's reality. Kali Brahman. Right? And in that section under Kali Brahman, as the heading, it talks about that she makes a statement that she who we call Kali, she is the one that they call Krishna. She's the one the Christians call Jesus. She's the one the Muslims call Allah. She's the one that's known as Ram, as Durga, as Lakshmi, like this. I'm not word for word. But it's she who's that Brahman, that universal consciousness that we hold as the essence of everything, right? That universal consciousness, Sri Ramakrishna was Kali. And he saw that, and so for his experience, like we say, as many paths, so many ways, these are big statements, right? Revolutionary statements for the time, even now, revolutionary. So we can say that we probably all here believe in some way, maybe if we're challenged, we don't know how to respond exactly, but all religions are equally true, or at least potentially true, right? But why do we think that? Well, we want to think that. It's out of part of a modern open-mindedness, out of a political correctness, out of it's like, and as our group thinks this way, so that's our religion to think this way, right? This wasn't, neither were these 3 points for Sri Ramakrishna's reasons, right? He said that because this was his experience. Kali showed him this, right? And he began to, and his statements are there, if we look for them, that he began to realize that this view of the actual unity of everything, this was unique, right? This was a unique revelation of Mother Kali. That his view of as many paths, so many ways, right, is a special gift of the Divine Mother. Right, that's one. It's not the only. That's one of the important messages. The first wave, you could say, of Sri Ramakrishna's teaching, of Kali's teaching, revelation of Sri Ramakrishna. But who's going to spread? He knew. Second, he saw Swamiji. Right, he knew. I recognize him. I saw you before. You're the one that's going to carry this. Right, but there was a problem. Right. Let's see what Swami Bhajanananda said about Kali at the time. How I used to hate Kali. This is his statement about that period of time. So the Sri Ramakrishna wanted his messenger of Kali's message of universality to the world. Right. His statement about that period of his training is how I used to hate Kali. Right. And all her ways. Right. Very nice. That was the ground of my 6-year fight. That I wouldn't accept her. So do you think we know how many years was Swamiji with Thakur? Right? So he said 6 years fighting Kali. Right? I loved him, you see. Right? He loved Sri Ramakrishna. Right? And that's what helped me. I saw his marvelous purity. I felt his wonderful love. Actually, Sri Ramakrishna would say something and Swami Vivekananda would disagree. He says, "Why are you coming if you disagree with me? I'm not coming to listen to you." He says, "I'm coming to see you. I love you, so I'm trying to see you. I don't believe any of the stuff you're talking about." Right? But since out of love, he couldn't leave. Right? So this is how. So he worked. Of course, we know Swamiji Thakur worked on him in his own way. I felt his wonderful love. His greatness had not yet dawned on me then. All that came after it, when I had given in. At that time, I thought him a brain-sick baby, always having visions and the rest. I hated it. And then I too had to accept her. Right? So very, very nice. And so, how did he come to accept her? We know there's another, like many devotees, I think this is universally true, but especially devotees of the Divine Mother Kali. You can almost any devotee you meet will always say that some of her best major teachings come through a great difficulty. Right, struggle. Sometimes you get a lesson or you pop through a great struggle. And the great struggle is Swami Vivekananda. He was from a very wealthy family, educated family. His father was a lawyer, I think, right? A barrister. But he was a very wealthy man and very open-hearted and generous man, but not necessarily a good businessman. And when he died, of course, what happened? Like everybody, he died. Right? And he didn't make good arrangements. He had a lot of debts. He didn't arrange proper trusts or whatever we'd call like that. And so the family, although they went from riches to poverty almost overnight, within a few months for sure, right? And they had no food. And we know the story of Vivekananda. He himself had great tests of his own faith during that time, right? And a lot of rumors came out of what he was doing. He rejected God. Swamiji was very dramatic, as we know, and so he was making very big statements that those messages came back to Sri Ramakrishna. You're an Narendra you love so much. He's saying that God doesn't exist, and if he exists, he's cruel. And if he does exist, we should never worship him. We should fight such a God. These type of statements he was making. Swamiji Thakur said, no, he would never. He's saying that he doesn't believe that. I know him. I saw him. I know what he came to do. You'll accept. Right? He's just going through his process, right? And so he was in very much difficulty. He's barefooted, almost going from job interview to job interview in the hot Calcutta sun, dramatically told. So then, this is very nice. This is also from the Lila Prashanga. It occurred to Swamiji speaking. It occurred to me that God grants the master's prayers. Right? God hasn't answered his prayers, but God always answers Thakur's prayers. So I should ask him to pray on my behalf that my family financial crisis should be overcome. I was sure that he wouldn't refuse for my sake. I rushed to Dakshineshwar and importuned him, saying, "Sir, you must speak to the Divine Mother so that my family's financial problems can be solved." Right? You speak to Kali. Right? So he doesn't believe it. Remember how I hated Kali along the way. Right? He didn't believe in this stuff. Also, he's from the Brahma Samaj. He was very much influenced by that movement. Right? So you have to put him also in some historical perspective. The master said, I can't, at one point, I'm not sure it's here, but he says, pray to Mother Kali. He says, you don't accept Mother Kali. Right? He says, I don't know your mother, Swamiji would say. Right? That's the problem, is that why don't you love your mother? Why don't I love Kali? I don't know her. That's a major part of it, even in that Hinduism text. Believing's not enough, right? You know, it's like people believe all kinds of things. And people, like somebody asks you, do you believe in God? Yes. Well, prove it. What's the evidence? When you come with all kinds of scientific and the different arguments and there's complex forms, you require a designer and the clock and you give all these different things, right? But a sage, somebody would say, a sage knows. I know. What about God and the soul? I know the soul. I know God. The argument ends there, right? I don't know. So how am I going to, just believing it? People believe and argue. They talk about the things we argue about things we haven't experienced, right? So that's the thing. I'm fighting because I don't know. That's why I'm fighting. Once you know, you don't have to, but you know, so you ask her. Right? It shows Swamiji's view. The master said, I can't make such demands. Why don't you go and ask the mother yourself? Why you don't accept the mother? That's why you have all these troubles. I replied, I don't know the mother. Please tell the mother for me. You have to, or else I won't let you go. That means most likely he was holding his feet. I won't let you go. The master said affectionately, my boy, I prayed many times to the mother to remove your suffering. But she doesn't listen to my prayers because you don't care for her. All right, today is Tuesday, and a day especially sacred to the mother. Go to the temple tonight and pray. Mother will grant whatever you ask for. I promise you. It's a big statement. Go, anything you ask, you'll get. I was at one temple there's a 500-year-old house. This house, Lord Chaitanya danced in front of the house in old Calcutta. Right, and a family, it's a priest family connected to Dakshineshwar, right? And they have, it's very hard to get to. The house is falling, the walls are this thick, right, and falling apart. And there's a deity of Chandi, and they told me anything you ask for, she'll give you, right? And then they said, I don't suggest asking anything, right? But she has this city. It's a solid gold deity. It's covered in kumku, nobody knows, and you don't know the addresses, so I'm revealing it now. It's a solid gold deity. And worship Nafani 500 years, the Chandi. Right? But that's a big matter. Anything you ask for, you will get. Careful. So we just carefully went in there, we bowed, and I was asking that the roof doesn't fall on me. It was incredible. There's a temple right across the street where Chaitanya chanted. It's that old, this house. Really incredible. So anyway, so Swami Krishna said, go now. Anything you ask, you'll grant. I promise you this. So he has to make in this emotional state, and Sri Ramakrishna's direct assurance. He knew anything he asked for, he'll get. Right? So he quickly ran to the temple. My mother is the embodiment of pure consciousness, the power of Brahman, and she has produced this universe by her mere will. What can she not do if she wishes? She's a Chamai after all, right? Talking to me. When the master said that, I was fully convinced that all my suffering would cease as soon as I prayed to her. I waited impatiently for the night. At 9 p.m. the master told me to go to the temple. On my way I was possessed by a kind of drunkenness and began to stagger. I firmly believed that I would see the mother and hear her voice. I forgot everything else and became absorbed in that thought alone. When I entered the temple, I saw that the mother was actually conscious and living, the fountainhead of infinite love and beauty. Overwhelmed with love and devotion, I bowed down to her again and again and prayed, Mother, grant me discrimination, grant me detachment, grant me divine knowledge, grant and devotion, grant that I may see you without obstruction. I think it's like, I forget the Bengali, it's a very beautiful, maybe somebody knows, like, Barad Dao, Bhakti Dao, I mean, the exact words we know, it's a nice prayer. Somebody you can ask, maybe not from the same place, but these words are good, grant me devotion. Even in the Sankalpa we chant, Bhakti Jnana Vairagya Siddharatam. Right? The reason we do the puja is, if there's a reason, we try not to worship with a reason, but if there's a reason, please give me devotion, give me renunciation, give me wisdom, give me spiritual perfection, uninterrupted vision. This is Swamiji's prayer. My heart was filled with peace. The universe disappeared from my mind, and the mother alone occupied it completely. So that didn't work. He was supposed to go and pray for her to solve his financial problems. 2 more times Sri Ramakrishna sent him back to the temple, and all 3 times Swamiji forgot to ask for his family's financial relief. The master then granted that his family would not lack plain food and clothing. So he says, that's okay. He said, you did this to me. You tricked me. This is your work. Right? So, he goes, what? You don't forget this time. Go back. He's still there. This time remember. Ask for And of course, this is Thakur's play or the Divine Mother's play, no difference, right? And finally he says, no, you have to say, okay. He says, your family will not lack from plain food and plain clothing. And actually, many people hold that this is a universal boon, right? The spiritual aspirant, Sri Ramakrishna's ideal is not help my family out of financial crisis, right? It isn't let my children do well, good in school, let us get a good job. Of course, we pray. He's our mother, father, everything. Who else we pray to? We ask these things, but that's not why Sri Ramakrishna is sitting here, so you can ask for a good job. Of course, if you need a job, ask her. She'll tell him. I was told that I was in trouble in South India. I had some paperwork problems and stuff like that. I was in big trouble, stuck in Chennai. And this Mahan Maharaj, he's a famous mathematician. He's an old friend from Berkeley also, from a student, way above me in class. But anyway, I told him my problem. He said, you go to the temple, but don't talk to the old man. Or her. Right? He says that he doesn't always listen, but she always listens to our prayers. Right? But anyway, so the Thakur is established here. For what ideal? Bhakti, Jnana, Vairagya, Siddha. Right? This is what Swamiji's prayer. This is like Thakur's ideal. And this is why these centers are here. This is why. But what about our actual needs? Right? So if our prayer is Bhakti Dao, Jnana Dao, Vairagya Dao, Vivek Dao. Right. If this is actually our prayers, then Thakur has, many people hold a special dispensation. That simple food and simple clothes you won't lack. And practically speaking, there's many rich devotees, but there's not many really poor devotees. I mean, really Thakur devotees is simple, but the abject poverty is less, right, from people connected to Sri Ramakrishna. And of course, part of their work is to end other people's poverty also. But that's if you're willing to have simple ideals, of course you work hard and there's karmas, you get the wealth that you're coming. But our idea, if we have a high idea, we shouldn't worry about the simple things. He'll arrange for our simple. Where is it, my mother? I have 6 minutes. On Swamiji's request, then Swamiji asked, "You teach me a song." And the whole night, Sri Ramakrishna taught him Shama Sangeet. To me, Gayatri, to me, I forget that song. A very beautiful song. The whole night, Swamiji was singing this song, right? And everybody who come the next morning, because it started at 9 o'clock at night, till midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, Swamiji was singing. Lost was his newfound faith, not belief, now faith, experience, right? In the reality of Mother Kali. And every time somebody comes, Thakur would say, Naren has accepted Kali. Isn't it good? It's good, right? Somebody else would say, see, Naren tonight he accepted Kali. It's good. Right? So it's good that Vivekananda accepted Kali, right? So anyway, because I have 5 minutes, so we'll fast forward to Swamiji coming back as his. Very important. So some years later, in those years of Swamiji's training by Thakur, Swamiji always wanted to experience a Nirvikalpa Samadhi, right? And so that day came during the final illness of Thakur, right? And Sri Ramakrishna was in his bed. It was late at night, and Swamiji was in his room meditating. And he describes, maybe I have everything here. Let me see. But he had the experience where the whole world disappeared, everything. He had the equivalent we would call Nirvikalpa Samadhi by the description of it. It can't be described, so it's hard to match descriptions, right? And then when he came back to external consciousness, he came in front of Thakur. And Thakur says, right? Now the mother has shown you everything. You had that ultimate experience. The mother showed that non-dual experience. But this revelation will remain under lock and key. And I will keep the key. Right? So Swamiji was not somebody who's always lost in Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Right? You will have to accomplish the mother's work. Right? So this means all what Swami Vivekananda did, Sri Ramakrishna called it, and he himself, the opening verse of our statement, he understood it as the mother's work. So the preaching of Vedanta, all this is also the mother's work. The universality of religion, this is mother's work. you will have to. I will keep the key, and when your work, when mother's work, when you accomplish the mother's work, and you will find the treasure again. Right. That means actually mother's work. Of course, it's two things that this means. That the knowledge of non-dual Brahman is also a gift of the Divine Mother. Right. It's Kali Brahman after all. Right. She's Brahmamoyi. Right. But also his work was and so when he's preaching, what was that? So in America, somebody barely mentioned Sri Ramakrishna. There's only, in talks and things, but there's only a few talks where he's mentioned, right? And he was scheduled to. There's places where he was scheduled to talk about Sri Ramakrishna in a big hall, and he'd look. It wasn't a room of devotees. Here we're in a room of devotees of Ramakrishna. We could talk about Ramakrishna. Right, he looked out, in Victorian times, looked out at the crowd. He said, everybody is just caught in kamini kanchan, right, and lust and greed. It's like, how can they understand my master's mind? Mm-hmm. Right, he'd come out and talk about Vedanta, right, the universal broad principle. They weren't ready for the person, right, and so he rarely mentioned Sri Ramakrishna. Even less did he mention Kali. Right, if it's not, people will misunderstand or not be subtle enough to understand Ramakrishna. They're impossible to not understand. Definitely to misunderstand Kali. Right, that's a different. We may misunderstand Thakur, but you may not understand Thakur, but you'll misunderstand Kali. Right, he's much more complicated. Right, but he did at times talk about her. Right, usually to close disciples and friends. Right, his 12 wishes. So I'll end with this. If I find it here. Good. Probably don't use. Sorry. Mother is the first manifestation of power and is considered a higher ideal than father. With the name of mother comes the idea of Shakti, divine energy and omnipotence. Just as a baby believes its mother to be all-powerful, able to do anything, the divine mother is Kundalini, the coiled-up power, sleeping within us. Without worshipping her, we can never know ourselves. All-merciful, all-powerful, omnipresent are attributes of the Divine Mother. She is the sum total of the energy of the universe. Every manifestation of power in this universe is Mother. She is life. She is intelligence. She is love. She is a universe, yet separates from it. She is a person and can be seen and known, just as Sri Ramakrishna saw and knew her. Establishing the idea of Mother, we can do anything. She quickly answers prayers. She can show herself to us in any form, at any moment. The Divine Mother can have form, rupa, and name, nama, or name without form. And as we worship her in these various aspects, we will rise to pure being, having neither name nor form. So by worshiping her, we also attain that supreme Brahman. And so, it's as we of course today we're honoring Swami Vivekananda and his and aspects of his. What a great gift he has given us. Of course, he gave us Vedanta. He gave us these universal ideas, but he also gave us Sri Ramakrishna, right? And therefore, he also gave us Mother Kali, right? And there's a Shardananda. My favorite verse. I have to tell you, my favorite verse in the entire Lila Prasanga, which is in English translation at present 1,008 pages. So this is my official favorite verse. I'll end with that. This is Shardananda meditating. Will people come on their own to accept the Divine Mother's liberal message? As many face, so many pass. It's the Divine Mother's message, not Sri Ramakrishna's message, not Swamiji's message. Right? And this is what Swamiji preached. He used this term one time. He said, "Why don't you talk about Kali?" No, this is my own thing. This is what I do. Right? He said, quote unquote, what's good for universal humanity. He gave the broad principles that were needed at the time. But those broad principles are still the message of Mother Kali. Will people come on their own to accept the Divine Mother's liberal message, as many face, so many pass? Or will they accept it through that person who became the instrument of the Mother and brought that message to the world, meaning Sri Ramakrishna? Can you accept Vedanta without Ramakrishna? Right? This is the question. Right? This gift. So the thing is the giver or the gift. Can you think of the gift without the giver? Right? My Guruji used to tell me, if I give you, and I was and am a poor boy at that time, a student. So if I come and give you, and I give you a check for $1 million, what happens? You're rich, right? He goes, yes. Who made you rich? He says, did I make you rich, or did the check of $1 million make you rich? The giver and the gift are so connected. Right? The gift of Vedanta, the gift of universality, the gift of all these living principles of religion, they're not separate from the giver, Sri Ramakrishna, and therefore Kali. It is through the person. The answer to this question, as we understand it, must be determined by the questioner after seeing the result of the full realization of the doctrine, either within themselves or in others. So he's not going to. It's not his tradition to force people to accept Ramakrishna. Right? You figure that out on your own. Until the realization dawns, silence is the best answer. But if the reader asks what we believe, this is Sharadananda, we say that along with the authentic experience of this liberal attitude, one must have the vision of that person whom the Divine Mother Kali, for the first time, sent to embody that doctrine for the good of the world. And one must pour our heartfelt love and respect for him who was free from ego and delusion, Sri Ramakrishna. The Master will not demand this. That's a beautiful thing. There's no fanaticism. There's no, I'm the new prophet, I'm the final prophet, this is the highest realization. The talk will never say such a thing. No one else will prompt it. Right? You won't hear that here either. Except Sri Ramakrishna, he's a whole new way. Right? But love for the Divine Mother will drive one to it spontaneously. So Sri Ramakrishna, we know that Swami Vivekananda in his glorious life, short but glorious life, he did Mother's work, without a doubt. Right? And a lot of it was done here. So we're the heirs of his tradition here too. But that child of the Divine Mother who did Mother's work, Thakur held the key. But those keys, that's a very nice symbol. Those keys are still around, laying around somewhere. Right? We can also find those keys. So one of my favorite, of course, we're aspiring devotees of the Divine Mother, so we're also looking for Kali statements that make us better than everybody else, right? And tell me appropriate response. But what Thakur says is that this idea of thinking, God, you are my mother, I am your child. Right? He says this is the final word of religion. This is the final word of spirituality, Thakur said. Right? It's a very big thing. But and Kali, the very misunderstood goddess, and there's many ways of worshiping her, not all of them safe, not all of them clean. Right? He practiced at the 64 tantras, but when his disciples came, including Vivekananda, what did he teach? His guru taught him 64 very difficult practices. I won't say them. I will just confuse you if I say it. I confuse me if I think about them. You know. But when he came to his disciples, that's Guru Parampara. Vaidyavi taught him. He taught his disciples. He taught you pray to Divine Mother like a child. You pray to the Kali like a child to its mother. Right? And then that all desires for the world, kamini kanchan, are destroyed by this simple act. Right? Right? So this is a unique presentation of special mercy of Divine Mother Kali in this age through her dear child and incarnation, and his dear child and vehicle, Vivekananda. I very much appreciate. When Swamiji invited me to come, I felt it was Swamiji's own invitation. And there's a verse in the Gita that says that the Lord fulfills the noble desires of the devotees. Right? And I've only had a few noble desires in my life. Right? And each one of them, sometime 20 years later, get fulfilled. Right? And one of them, years ago, I'm watching Swami Apuripananda do puja when I was still learning puja at the time in the other room. I thought, it would be neat to worship these pictures of Sri Ramakrishna. Oh, wow. He fulfilled that very much desire. Sri Ramakrishna, Jai Thakur, thank you for your time. Thank you. The time was 6 minutes late, so that's okay.
I'd like to thank Swami Bhajanananda for coming today and sharing wonderful experiences. One suggestion is that in their Kali Mandir, every year they have a big puja towards Mother Kali. And it's usually in July?
Sometime like that, right?
Around July.
It's a Palaharni Kali puja.
Yeah.
Palaharni Kali Mother.
Yes. And so it's worth going to. I think it's actually for 3 days. Is it 3 days?
Well, now we used to do it. We used to bring the priest from Dakshineshwar.
Right.
We had, but our
the actual
head priest passed away. So now we're doing it. We're still doing the festival. We're doing it. We used to rent the school, and it was a big thing to bring the priest. But things have changed. He was the head priest at Dakshineshwar for 53 years. And he's the one that installed our murti of Kali. And so our puja tradition is from the Dakshineshwar taught by him. So we're still brokenhearted about his untimely passing. So now we still do it. We do it at the temple.
I see. Yeah. So they used to invite the actual priest at Dakshineshwar to come to their place every year, and he would do the Kali puja. So, is he a relative?
Yeah, he's by marriage. He's in Ramakrishna's family. Yeah.
I see. So it's a wonderful. It is in the summertime. If you haven't, it's only about an hour 50-minute drive from here. So you should try to go.
Everyone's invited. But I thought parking's limited there.
Parking is limited, so you have to make some arrangements.
I can't get the RSC.
Yeah, call. We're having more problems with parking because of neighbors. So that's why we're doing more limits. We can't have big crowds. That once a year crowd, Falharni, we have arrangements with neighbors. Our problem is like Shamakali Puja, we had 420 people.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
And we have 40 parking spaces and room for 100 people. So that's non-sustainable.
You need to get a shuttle bus.
Yeah, so we're having to make adjustments. Our normal monthly things we're no longer doing the big programs. We're doing special big pujas throughout the year, and just more. We're kind of switching more to ashram mode than big public mode. Maybe we can discuss that. I don't understand.
So thank you everyone for coming, and so if you're new, we have lectures on Sundays, and many of you may know Swami Sarvapriyananda, the Swami who's our new assistant minister. He'll be giving a retreat in the first week of March on Saturday. So I know sometimes people have to change dates. It'll be March 5th, Saturday. So if you'd like to come, you're all welcome to come to that. One thing we didn't get a chance to hear, next time, Maharaj, we'll have to have you sing. He's also a wonderful singer as well.
Yes,
So we thank you. I'll just leave with one thing. When I was in training center, the relationship between Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother, and Swami Vivekananda. One of our Swamis said we have 3 holy scriptures in Hinduism. And so they are the Upanishads, the Bhagvat Gita, and the Brahma Sutras. Okay, these are the trio. These are what's considered for Vedanta. They're the 3 main scriptures. And he used to say that Sri Ramakrishna symbolizes the Upanishads. What are the Upanishads? The revelations of one's experiences. When you read Ramakrishna's life, you read about his experiences. When you read the life of Holy Mother, you see Vedanta in action. She led a life of one of action. How to take Vedanta into the household place. So the Bhagavad Gita is about taking Vedanta into your practical life, practical Vedanta. And Swami Vivekananda, there's the scripture called the Brahma Sutra, which is basically it interprets what the Upanishad says. It's a commentary on the Upanishads. So Vivekananda was sort of the mouthpiece of Sri Ramakrishna. And when Rupananda used to sit here, he said, it's just one consciousness. He didn't say this, but you sometimes think of Mother Kali in the background. When she wants to reveal herself, the experiences, Ramakrishna comes out. When she wants to show the practical, living our daily life, Mother comes out. When she wants to, the commentary, understand it, Swamiji comes out. So it's one divine consciousness having many, many different faces of the divine, depending on how it functions. So we thank everyone for coming, and please have prasad. Now, because it is raining, so usually we don't do this. We will have to eat inside here. I just request don't eat on the carpet. Okay? So just keep this space a little bit sort of sacred here, and you can eat on chairs. So I'd like to invite Swamiji to do our chant here, and everybody's welcome to have prasad here. Yes.